Pat, we're standing here outside your house, and there's trees and shrubs and bits and plants around me. Where did you get half of them from at all?
They were picked up all over the whole country, all over the whole county. So there were bits and pieces. I used to be driving lorry, and anywhere I'd see something that I thought, oh, that might grow at home, I'd pull up and hop out and break a bit off it and sow it. And even there's one there that came all the way down from Kerry one time. And
What's that, Pat?
see this small green lad, this small lad, I don't know what you I haven't a clue what you call him. That small green lad. That's where he came from. I was there for a few days and seen something, broke a bit off and shook in the boot of the car and brought it with me. So I could be arrested maybe for it, but I didn't ignore it. I thought I'm going to bring this and that's it. Like.
And you have bits and pieces over here, and can you remember where any of these came from at all?
They came from the monastery in Ballyglonan. That's where that lad came from.
This fella here.
That lad. Yeah, and all them four there. That's where they came one small bit and transferred and kept shifting it around, and that's where the likes of that came out of, like, you know. And they said to you the High Ranger came up from the Church of Lomela. I was working for Foss one time, and I thought, well, sure, I'll take a bit of that with me and bring it.
And even yourself, do you have anything from your home place? No, were you born and bred here?
Oh, I was, yeah. This was home, like. Yeah. The old house was there for them sheds on now. It was an old thatched house. You know, I built that house there in 1979. It was. We came up, me and myself and Nona, and we built that. We had the family then, and that's where they were reared. You know.
Was there any trees left or anything left over from your own mother and father's time? Any plants at all?
No, the only thing that's left, I think, now is that old holly tree there above.
The holly tree. Oh, the one up here?
Yeah, the one there above.
Oh, I see her.
Yeah, that one. That's the only one. That's the only one that's left of the home, the old people.
And would that remind you of your own mother and father?
Oh, it would, yeah, because she used to have a little garden, you know, about 3 or 4 foot wide, and she'd have stones all around it, and she'd be sowing her few flowers in it. And, you know, that's what she'd go up there and she'd do a bit of weeding, and she'd go down on her knees, and in her last years, like, you know what I mean.
That was your own mother?
That was my own mother, yeah.
What was her name?
Ellen.
Ellen
Ellen Hansbury. She was Ellen Carrick. And before that was her maiden name.
And would you get berries on it at all?
No, well, they do sometimes. Maybe there was one year there last year, but I know but as they said, the birds, sure, the birds will come before Santa will come and have them. They'll take they want them for themselves, like, so they do, you know. No, But that's the only one that's left now. There's a few other old wild trees up there, all right, but sure they meant nothing, like, you know.
Would you cut down that holly tree?
Oh no. That holly tree stays while I'm here, and I hope it'll stay when I'm gone. You know, that's. I always, when I look at that, I can always say my mother. You know. She used to go up there when, you know, when in her last years, like, she had this little garden. So that used to be where the stacks oats was, and the hay was one time that they had it before these new modern bales and all this. There was stacks oats and cocks of hay, you know, made that. She'd go up there and she'd clean, you know, sit there for a while, and she'd pick a couple of weeds if she was able, but that's I wouldn't want that tree knocked. I wouldn't like it knocked. to
Oh, did-
to
did-
remind me of her, like, you know what I mean. I always think of her when I walk up around there.
We're standing outside your house here, and there are loads of bits and pieces here from different people over the years. Can you point out a few to me?
Okay, so first we have 2 cherry blossoms. These were planted by my parents when we built our house 17 years ago. This was, rather than giving a gift that would eventually either go into a cupboard or something like that, they planted as trees, which is actually quite nice. I love cherry blossoms. Behind us here is a fuchsia tree, fuchsia plant. This is from my grandmother's house in Ballingeary in Cork. Again, I took this shortly after we built the house. So that's grown. I have snippets of it grown over here as well. So if I took from here and planted 2 more of them. Over here then we have a beech tree that is planted by my father-in-law for my son Owen when he was born. Thomas built all the wall here for us, and he built the rockery. So Owen was 4 months old when he finished that, and he went out and he bought the beech tree, or he got the beech tree, and he planted that for him. That's his tree. Over here we have a tree, I'm not sure what it is. This is Keen's tree. So this was planted 13 years ago when Keen was born. And then when Aidan arrived, Grandad planted that tree over there. So the spots were all picked by Grandad. He planted the trees where he felt they should go in the house, so it's perfect.
And that's Tom Ruan.
That's Thomas Ruan, yeah.
Thomas Ruan. And you planted 3 trees
3 trees,
when they were born.
1 each.
How many years ago was that?
15 the eldest.
And why did you do that?
For the want for them to do, I suppose. For the want for them to do. Not here to do.
Nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Do you think that they will always remember those trees as the trees that you planted?
What about them?
Will they remember those trees as the trees that you planted with them
Oh, yeah.
when you're gone?
Yes. Yeah.
We're all gone, those trees will be there.
Oh, they should be. Oh, they will be.
And do the young lads know that your granddad planted it?
Oh, always have, since they were able to understand what we were saying to them. We always told them that that's Grandad's tree, that's what Grandad planted for them. They know which tree is theirs.
And why did you bring a piece of a fuchsia from Cork up to here, up to Galway?
Cork is very close to me. It's a place we have gone and spent holidays with down there all the time when we were growing up. We're very close to the Cork side of our family. So, and my grandmother and grandfather down there was very close to them. So it was bringing a piece of their tradition, because fuchsias just grow everywhere in Cork. So it was just bringing some of their tradition down to my house. So there's always a piece of Cork here. So.
And are the granny and grand, are they still with us?
No, they're many years past.
Oh.
So.
They're alive and well here now at your door coming in, or your gate here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're always here.
This tree was planted in 1919. It was when my grandfather married into this farmyard here. He came up from a place called Gurchin, which was 7 or 8 miles away from here. He married into Mrs. Lyons. They had 2 in family. My father, who was Fred Kinney, and my aunt, who was Mary Kate Kinney. They were born in 1921. My grandfather was a very good man at making apple tarts in his home place in Gurchin, and he liked to see the tradition carried on for his family, which they did all through the 50s and 60s and 70s, and then it came around to me and I had to take over. And actually I've learned my son how to make an apple pie now, and only yesterday he made an apple crumble from the very apples that came from this tree that was planted in 1919.
And that tree is 100 years old.
That tree is 100 years old. It might look worse for the wear with the ivy that's on it, but it's still producing the fruit, as you can see here, as good as the day, well, not the day it was planted, but 15 years probably after it was planted, it started producing fruit. But it's still there. He brought the seed from a tree in Gurchin. And my father told me the story how he sowed a couple of them seeds and one of them germinated. And that is the tree that came from Gurchin to Mullaghmore via a seed. It's leaning over a small bit, but it's still there, as good as anything. And a little story about it. We do have hens and chickens here in the farmyard, and you think the fox is very cute in getting a hen, but when the hen goes up that tree, no fox will get her. She will stay there all night long, and the fox will never catch her.
We're standing outside your home here in Skahana,
Yes,
and you've moved to the area, have you?
we moved here 6 years ago now. We're originally from Roscommon.
And one of the things that I heard back through your son and daughter in school was that you had a sister who passed away.
I did. I had a sister, Katie. She passed away on the 9th of December 2016. She was 23. She passed away very suddenly. She was actually sitting in this house on the Thursday night having tea. They'd come in from the Christmas market in Galway, and the next morning I got a phone call at 9 o'clock saying that she had died, which was sudden and shocking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that your son and daughter were saying was that your father at home built a little memorial or a little...
He did. One of my mother's friends sent her a rose bush, and I think she sent it in January, maybe after Katie died, and it was just sitting kind of in its pot in the back kitchen, or outside at the back window, and they decided to plant it. So Dad built a concrete heart in the garden, and he did that in the March after Katie died, and he planted the rose bush in it, and he put lights all around it, and we painted the heart, and we sow different flowers in there each spring, and people leave things in it. And I suppose he kind of looks at it that it's a heart shining up to Katie to let her know that we haven't forgotten her and that we love her and miss her.
And that's grown there now as we're talking.
It is, and it's grown rapidly. I can't get over how fast this rose bush grows. Like, it really is remarkable.
And you were saying as well, as a personality, she was it
Yeah.
suited her.
Definitely. She was very vibrant. She was tall and gorgeous looking, and she just loved life. Like, it really robbed, so young and so sudden.
But your mother and father have it there as a reminder.
They do. And I think even doing the heart and building it for Dad, was nice for him, because it gave him something to focus on not long after Katie passed away, because Katie was born on the 1st of January, so Christmas time she died. She was born around that time. We had our anniversary, her birthday. It's a hard time of year, so after that it gave him something to focus on.
And had you ever thought about planting something yourself?
I hope to maybe take cutting off the rose bush and maybe have a bit of it here sometime, but I definitely want to plant a memory tree for Katie somewhere in my garden, hopefully in the near future.
In your new home here?
Yeah.
Lovely, thanks a million.
No problem. Thank you.
James,
Yes,
standing
sir.
outside your house here, and beside you are some roses. Where did those roses come from?
They came from Carnacraig. There's a house down there, a big house. They used to call it the big house, Carnacraig. And my grandfather he was the gardener there. And he brought them, I suppose, slips out of them or something. Although my sister said one time the slips never will grow. And anyone got slips and they wouldn't grow for them. So he was all right. They grew here anyways.
And was there a name on them?
Tea roses, they call them.
Tea roses.
Tea roses.
What are you talking? How many years are you talking these were planted?
We'll say 180 years ago.
And they flower every year.
The flower every year comes out in summertime. Flower and well, they're They're a creeping rose, you see. They open the thatch door. And then again, they settle down and come out again at Christmas.
Christmas?
Yeah, but they wouldn't be as plentiful now at Christmas time as what they would be in summer. But they're a bit of a nuisance when you want to go painting. That's all.
Would you get rid of them?
Oh no, you have to put them out like that, turn them out. You see, they're held up with in the thatch. That's what holds them up there.
No nails, just attach.
No nails.
And would you pluck the rose now come at Christmas and put it on the table inside or anything like that?
No, look, I wouldn't say that. I don't believe in putting them on the table at all.
Leave them where they are.
Leave them where they are.
That rose bush came from a neighbour next door. She called one day and she said, I have some cuttings here, so would you like to plant them? And I said, well, we'd love to. So then she came and she brought us a load of them, and I planted them many years ago. And they're lovely around the house. You just want to see them in July. That's the time of the year they're really blooming. And they're beautiful to watch and look at and around the house. And her name is Julia Collins.
Julia Collins.
Julia Collins.
And Julie was a next door neighbour of yours?
And Julia was a next door neighbour of mine, yeah. Yeah.
And is Julia with us anymore, Noreen?
Julia sadly has passed on. She died a few years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were so sad for her. She was the best neighbour you could ever have.
Yeah.
And she was always fun and chat and flowers. You know, she was
great, yes,
great,
yes.
you know.
Yeah.
And that was her rose?
That was her rose.
That was her rose, and we'll never forget it for her either.
No. Beautiful, yeah. Yes.
Well, this rose bush was planted back when the Jimison estate was completed back in 1775, and it has survived many difficult days since. Even in the refurbishment of the house here, we kept this plot here, and it has remained there since. And it dies back every autumn, as you can see, and in springtime it comes to life again. It has been pruned on numerous occasions, but every summer it has never failed to flower, and they're just gone back there now. But that really is the history of this rosebush, and it gets very little care, but it has lasted the test of time, both in weather, storms, frost and snow. It never fails to bloom in summer.
Can you tell me the story behind that tree?
Well, there's a little bit of history to it as regards who planted that tree. And it was a man of my own name, my uncle, David Laffey, and if he planted it, it was planted about 1920, because he went off to America after that, and I don't think he ever came back. So that tree would be just about 100 years old.
And what was your uncle's name?
David.
David as well?
Yes. Yep.
David Laffey?
Yes.
And he was born and bred here as well?
He was born in that same house there.
Born in the house behind the tree?
Yeah.
And he was your father's brother?
Yes.
Yeah. And he planted that tree in that ditch?
Yes, and he planted a lot more around the house. Every one of them that's the only one that is left out of about 40 that he planted.
Behind me here is a fairy bush, as I was brought up to call it. And my grandfather was the first that I heard talk about this. It's a once-off bush in this area and isolated and on its own. And we were always told that it was a fairy bush and not to touch it and to respect it. And we've done that. He did it in his time, since he would have gotten this land in 1917. He would have minded it. And my father would have taken over Seamus Laffey. He looked after it in the very, very same way, and it's passed on to me now, and I'm doing the very, very same thing, protecting it as it was. People talked here about, you know, that this field here, they said there was a Fogean marrow here, which was where somebody would come in here in the middle of the night and actually never get out of this field. And, you know, whether it's legend or whether it's the physical shape of a man, that his right side is heavier than his left and he keeps going anti-clockwise or clockwise when he's walking, I just don't know.
But this field was associated with the Fogean marriage?
It was indeed, yeah. This field was associated with it, yeah.
Probably all connected back to the fairies?
Oh, no question about it. And the fairy fort or the ring fort is just down here 200 yards away on my right hand side, yeah. At the end of this field here as well, there is a mass path. And there are two stiles and they're still there. And it's interesting that in one corner of the field here, my father in around 1936 or 7, when he was ploughing, he found a brooch that had been dated to the 8th century. And it's in the museum, and all the documentation that goes with it, it's all there, the full story. It's a beautiful story where he gave it to a neighbouring child who took it to the school because he knew the teacher was working on behalf of the museum. And all the correspondence between the museum and the school and the pupil are all there on file in the National Museum. So it's a great story.
Tommy, we're in the townsland of Winfield, and you said there's a rare enough tree here.
Well, as far as we know, it's one of the last oak trees that's left from the Jimison estate. All this land here behind us was all parkland until it was divided up with the people, and all the oak trees were removed. There was some beech trees as well down along the drive here. But as far as we know, this is one of the last surviving oak trees, and it's just for one of the first times now there's acorns on it this year, after a small bit of work was done at the top of it to maintain it about 10 to 15 years ago, where the lightning struck it, but it has survived. And Winfield oak had a great name around the country because it was grown on very dry limestone land. As a result, the timber was very hard. But there was a lot of oak trees planted back when the estate was established back in the late 1770s. So as far as we know, this is one of the last oak trees that's surviving, and there's acorns on it this year for the first time in as far back as I can remember.
And my father-in-law would have bought this land. It was owned by Jemison, which would be inside us here, and this would be all plantation. This would be all, but they turned it into agriculture a good few years ago. It's probably 50 years ago. My father-in-law remembers, but sadly he's passed 2 years ago. He remembers this being all wood, and this is the only one that's left. You know what I'm saying? And this has been here, and when I moved in, an awful thing to say, but I was nearly thinking of cutting it down, but you know, it's longer here than me, so why should I? You let nature take its course, you know. There must be some significance to it when it's still here, you know. You know, it's the last one, the last remaining, you know what I'm saying? And it's towering there every morning, and it's at night you'd hear it and the wind blowing through it, you know, and it stands there, it's in my way when I'm cutting the lawn. Things like that, and you don't bless it, but you know, who are we to change life, you know?
We're in the townsland of Scana.
Yep.
And behind you are little white thorn trees or skioks grown, and there's little white stones marking something. What are they marking?
They're marking graves belonging to small babies that were born out of wedlock, or they could have been stillborn, any child that hadn't been christened as well, or that wasn't seen fit by the church to be buried in consecrated ground.
Your father-in-law has a brother here, is that
He
right?
has a brother here. His mother had a twin pregnancy, and the second baby was born stillborn, and he was buried here as he wasn't christened before he passed away. And I suppose that, like a lot of local people, it has a huge emotional attachment to the graveyard, because everybody has somebody buried in one of these killings locally, be it here, the Curraghan, Ballinagrusheen. I think we've 6 in total. And we've just begun to start doing them up, mark them, bless them. With this one here was our first one last year, and it just resonates with people, I suppose, and lets them feel like emotionally they have their loved ones resting once the graves have been blessed.
And remembered.
And remembered, yeah, that they did matter. And it was I suppose things were kept quiet. They didn't speak about it, it wasn't talked about. And now we're of an age where we can talk about it, bring it back to light, and recognise them.
And now we're on a busy road here, and people going by here now will see that sign behind you. They will know that.
They will. They know it's there. And even when we were starting to fix it up, people didn't know what we were doing. They never knew the stones were there because you passed by the road so quickly you'd never see it. And now I suppose it's set in people's minds that it is there, and they can come in and look at it. The farmers has been very good to us, that the people can come in and say a prayer or whatever it is they want to do, just take a minute. And it is a busy road, and you wouldn't see it there if you were going along. It's very busy, but this has marked it and opened people's minds as to what went on years ago. People didn't realise now how hard it was to bury someone that really didn't do anything very much wrong at all, and were put into these places.
Pat, we're standing here in the townland of Ballinrowan, isn't that right?
That's right, yes, that's it.
And we're standing here by a tree that...
in memory of Cathy Hansberry.
And Cathy was your...
daughter. Myself and Ona. Ona's her mother's name, and Pat's my name.
And Cathy passed away, didn't she?
She did, yeah. She passed away last July, 12 months. July 18.
And that was a big shock for you?
Oh. Well, because it was a big shock for the rest of our lives, like, you know, sure, for me and Ona, it never will be the same again. The family chain is broken, like. You know, there was 6, we had 6 in family. We have four girls and 2 boys. And Cathy was the second oldest, and we lost her.
Cathy lived at home here with you?
Cathy was in the home house. Cathy wasn't married. She was still here with Mum and Dad all the time, like. You know, she had never left home. She was always here. And we thought that she was always going to be here, but we were wrong about that bit of it. You know?
Your hand is resting on a fence that's guarding a tree, protecting a tree.
That's right, yeah. We put that whole fence around it, just, you know, there'd be calves, and Martin would have calves, and he'd have cows in here, like, you know. We had to have something to put to guard it, like, you know. They wouldn't knock it over. There's no point in sowing it if she wouldn't be happy with it if we let them knock it over. She wouldn't be happy with us. It was us that get to tell them off, or for letting it happen.
And the tree here beside you, you planted that when she passed away?
Yeah, we planted that in 2 days before our month's mine mass. That's when that was planted. It was planted around the 5th or 6th of August, I'd say, in 18. You know, that's when it was planted. The whole family was here. You know, the whole lot of them, and the grandchildren. They were all here. So it was for the grandchildren. It was a big occasion, like, you know. For men, they were all excited and flying around with footballs, and they were very happy. Like, they didn't realise what it was like, you know. But sure, isn't that life? And what can you do? You know, you play the hand you're dealt, and that's it. You know, that's the way I see it.
And they all call this tree Cathy's tree?
That's it. That's what it's called. The trees, and they'll all go out there and have a look, and but no one of them will go in there near or anything, like, you know. They'll just look at it, and there was visitors home here from America. There were relations of ours, and they took photographs of it, and I suppose they'll show it beyond America to people, like, you know, to friends of ours, and tell them what happened. You know? And
you also you said you planted some roses and tulips and daffodils, didn't you?
Yeah, we put a row of tulips or daffodils all around it, and we put there's 4 tulips in it as well, like, and the wild rose. Don't forget that, lad.
A wild rose.
A wild rose.
Was that a slip off of one of Cathy's?
It was a slip off of a bunch of roses someone brought to the house sometime with her mother or something, and she took a slip off on them and stuck it out the back of the old sheds there. and it started to grow, and I took a piece off it, and I tried the same thing, and it worked. You know, it's growing away there. I don't know will it flower or not. It may never flower, but sure, look at it's nature, isn't it? That's the way it, just something to remind me of it, like, you know, when I'd walk out, I'd think about her.
And would you look at the tree nearly every second day, I'd say?
I look at the tree 100 times a day. I do, but I always say, like, I wish you seen it growing, like, you know what I mean? Maybe I suppose we should have maybe sown it before she passed away, but we didn't do that. It's in memory of her now. That's why it is there now, like. Because it's a memory of Cathy, like.
And from now on, it'll always be known as
Cathy's 3. Yeah, it'll ever now always be known as that forever until stay there, I suppose. They tell me that it'll take it. They say that them will keep growing for 100 years. I don't know if they will or not, but as I said to you before, I won't be there to know. No, I won't be there to know whether it's growing or not, but should the young ones coming up behind her, or nieces and nephews, when they're as old as me, it'll be fairly well on then.
they look after it for her.
Yeah.
Thanks a million, Pat.
That's all right. You're very welcome.